Welcome to another episode of Behind the Dreamers. I'm Jennifer Loading, and we are talking to the achievers, the creators, the magic makers, and the dreamers. These are our friends, these are your friends, and they are living the extraordinary. Well, my guest today says that he thought he had made it when he finished training in medicine. He had all the skills he needed to be a great physician, but very little of those to handle the rest of his life. He very quickly had to learn the ropes, said he made a ton of mistakes. He took the punches as they came. And as a result, he's been able to succeed in medicine and start a few businesses. Most recently, he's the president of a private equity company that has bought over $250 million worth of real estate and has helped others along the way. So I am excited to chat with him today. But before we bring him on, I do want to do a quick shout out to our sponsors. So today's episode is brought to you by Walt Mills Photography. If you are a creator needing post-production, consultation, or promotion, Walt is your guy. Whether short films, YouTube films, a new headshot, or some photography work, he can help you find a solution to match your needs. To learn more about Walt and his work, go to photosbywalt.com. We also want to give a shout out to our friend Chris Clow of Upbeat Media Production. If you are in need of turnkey special event production, Clow is your go-to. To learn more about him and his work, you want to go to upbeatmediapro.com. All right, I'm so excited to welcome our guest today. Pranay, I always like to say super excited. That's like my big word. So I'm super excited to welcome you here today. But for my audience, let me tell them a little bit more about you. He's a medical doctor, serial entrepreneur. I love this. I almost said social entrepreneur as serial entrepreneur and podcast host. His unconventional journey to medicine helped him learn the skills to excel in entrepreneurship and real estate. Over the past 2 years, he's bought over $250 million in real estate while practicing full-time as a doctor. Wow. So now Pranay says he helps those trapped in their day jobs start a business to live the life they want. So Pranay, welcome to the show. Excited to have you here.
Hey, Jennifer. Thanks for the opportunity. Excited to chat.
It's going to be fun. And I just, what my favorite part of these is always going through you guys, your bios. Like that's my favorite part of this whole thing is really looking at all the great things that you guys are doing and just having to try to pick out what are the highlights here, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So welcome. So I kind of want to start this off because you are a doctor. And so we're going to have fun here. I'm just excited to really pick your brain and hear what you're doing because you're not just a doctor, you're doing real estate. So I guess tell us a little bit about how you got into this.
So, I started, I got out of residency, full-fledged doctor. I excited, made a, decent paycheck, but I knew that it was more important what I did with my money than how much I made. You can make a lot, and if you spend every bit of it, you're not going to really have a great retirement. And I knew that the current way of medicine, it's pretty hectic, and there's an epidemic of burnout. Right. So I wanted to protect myself from that. And I knew that I needed income from outside of medicine to do that. So, the traditional way to do it is put money in your retirement, wait till 65, retire and all that. I had already done so much delayed gratification. I didn't want to wait another 30 years to get the life I wanted. So I decided against, the 401k and all that stuff. So I looked around at what I could do. And real estate seemed, relatively simple. My parents had done some. And there's 18-year-olds that are killing it in real estate. I figured how hard can it be? I can figure it out. So I bought my first 4-unit about a year out of residency. And I hit the jackpot. It was a home run. And I was like, man, this is easy, and I spent the next year trying to find another one where I didn't realize how lucky I had gotten with my first one. And so that's being a landlord. And then I found out you can actually invest in real estate, get all the benefits without actually being a landlord, getting those phone calls, having to deal with tenants and all that stuff. And that's called syndications. And you invest in an apartment complex just like you would with Apple or Tesla. You get a little piece and you get all the tax benefits and everything. So I did that and I realized that there wasn't a ton of education out there, and I really enjoy education. As you can see, I went through 30 years of it, but I also taught at the medical school after I graduated just to kind of give back as a volunteer. And so I talked to my business partner at the time. I was like, hey, we should create a course. We created a course. We've taught thousands of how to invest in these deals. But, a handful of our alumni came up to us and they said, yeah, we've taken the course. We understand how to do this, but we're busy doctors. We want to spend the rest of our time with family. So can we just invest in the deals that you guys are already vetting, already investing in yourselves? And that's what we did. Our very first deal together was just a very small piece of a much larger deal. But over time, we've created an investor base that now we can take down a whole apartment complex ourselves.
Wow, I like it. Wow. And I think that's so interesting about this is when you say, yeah, you spent, all this time going through medical school, which it is, it's a lot. I haven't done it. I know people that have, and it's a lot. And then to really come out of that and say, I don't want to wait another 30 years to tap into my retirement. How can I invest, so that I can get my money quicker and have the turnaround? And so I want to say kudos to you on that front, just taking that, because that's a different kind of risk, right? It's a different type of risk to do that. You're moving from, okay, doctor, there's different risk with that, but then going into, okay, entrepreneur side of things, which is a whole nother gamut. So I think maybe a question I would like to ask you is, and I guess maybe this is coming from your medical perspective, how do you feel like that prepared you for going into this entrepreneur space?
So we work pretty hard, especially in residency, 60 to 80 hour weeks. So they have a law that we're only allowed to work 80 hours a week only. And it's average of 80. Yeah. So it's an average of 80. So you could work 120 hours one week and 60 hours another week. And that's, considered average of 80. So, you're used to grinding, but you're having to learn all these new skills and new courses. So, 1 month I'll do cardiology. So I'll work with a heart doctor. Another month I'll do pulmonary, where I'm working with a lung doctor, and you're learning all these new specialties so you can pick up stuff pretty quick. I find the biggest issue with most doctors and actually other professionals, masters, PhDs, and really people of all sorts, that they think that because they only know one thing, that's all they can ever learn, and lawyers, dentists, people in biology, people in mathematics, really just all of communications, they feel like the further down the path that they can't go back and learn something. But it's, it is painful when you're learning something new, being in first grade of real estate kind of sucks, right? But it's also kind of fun. The stakes are a lot lower, right? If you're up there giving your PhD thesis, right, the stakes are pretty high. But, when you're learning something new, the stakes are low and it could be really fun. I find, especially in medicine, we're all perfectionists, right? And we kind of have to be. You can't, a 90% survival rate kind of sucks, right?
Right.
So because that's so ingrained in us, that carries over to whatever we're doing. But, a 90% success rate in real estate is actually killer. I mean, look at I think of baseball, a great batting average is 40%. 40% is huge.
Yeah.
Even 30% is pretty good. But in other things, we're just such perfectionists, and a lot of times it just carries over to everything we do.
Sure. Well, and I always say, I kind of have a saying, and the things that I talk about when I'm working with people, I always say how you do one thing is really how you do all things, right? And there's really I feel like there's no separation even from how we conduct business and how we live our personal lives. I really feel like these things, they kind of manifest a little bit differently, but our ideas and our values and our work ethic, all those things that come up really kind of transfer into all the things that we do. So I think that's really good. And I just wanted to ask you that. I kind of had an idea, but I feel like, again, that work ethic comes across, from here to there. It follows you wherever you go. I feel like you either have it or you don't have it. You know what I mean? And that's kind of been my experience when I'm dealing with people, but I like it. I think it's awesome. And, You said some really good things about this. I actually know a guy here. It's funny. I know a couple young people that are investors in real estate and are doing really, really well in it. So it sounds like it's a good time to be, doing that. And you guys are offering this course and this investor side of things. So I think that's awesome too. What do you feel like has maybe been, and you kind of mentioned in the beginning, having to find that next property. But I'd love to ask you, just moving into the entrepreneur space, what do you feel like has been maybe the biggest challenge that you had to really work to get through?
I think the biggest challenge that a lot of people face is knowing who to ask, and that's one of the most difficulty parts. And, keep leaving your ego at the door, which, fortunately, so there's 3 partners, including me. We, all of us are pretty laid back. So, we know what we don't know. And so we have this network of people that are really experts in their fields. And, a lot of times, so our first deal was $3 million, which if you would have asked anyone how big your first deal should be, they would say a couple 100,000. Our second deal was a $10 million fund. If you would have asked people, should I do a fund? They would say, no, you should have 5 years of track record before you start a fund. So part of our inexperience was a benefit, right? It's like, who's killing it in taxis right now? Uber, right? They're not a real estate company. Who's killing it in hotels? Airbnb, they're not a hotel company.
Right.
And so a lot of times coming from outside is a benefit. But you have to come from outside, but also be humble enough to know that you need help. So, we have a network of people who are experts in their fields and have been doing real estate for a while. I think coming in from the outside and then not reaching out to experts, that's how people fail. But if you have best of both worlds where we're like, oh, we don't know if we can do this, let's try it, but we'll have mentors or people. And, one brief thing about mentorship, mentors are hard to find. And a lot of times the way you find them is you pay them, we pay 5 figures for our mentors, coaches to guide us through this process, and it saves us years and potential hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. But, I know a lot of times if you feel kind of guilty or you feel like you're cheating a little bit to when you pay someone to mentor you, but people do that all the time. We think about coaches, right? Like Venus Williams has a coach, right? Adele has a coach. Like these people are at the top of their game. Yeah. And we can all use some help as well.
Yeah, I agree with you on it. I have a coach as well. So, and I paid a lot of money for him too. So I'm with you. You don't even have to convince me on that. I'm with you. I feel like everybody that's trying to do something huge, and even if it's not huge, but if you're trying to level up on any capacity, I feel like it's hard to stay committed to yourself, right? Like it's hard to, some of us I have pretty good discipline. Sounds like you do too, but it's still, when you have a coach, you're going to work harder. You're going to level yourself up more. So I agree with you. But something I want to point out that I think is really, I think kind of the resonating message I'm getting from you is this openness to learning, which I think is so interesting because I had a conversation with somebody the other day on this show who was also he's like a holistic type coach. He kind of coaches on the same premise that I do. A lot of my work is from a holistic nature. And I'm talking both in physical and well-being. It's on both ends, the way I coach. And it's funny because we were talking about this when you're growing and learning and how your relationships evolve and how you let go of some of the people you probably don't associate with them and you get new people in your life. And I said something, that I've kind of been, I came from the network marketing space. So I'm talking 22 years in that industry. So I had mentors I've had them for almost my entire career as an entrepreneur. And then I went on my own a couple years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago. I formed my own LLC, went on my own. And all of a sudden the dynamics changed because I was no longer part of that community. So I had to find my own mentors. I had to start now being creative and finding people. But in that process, I've always said that I could never imagine getting to a place where I don't continue to keep growing as a human being. Like I don't continue to want to be a better human being because I feel like when we're continually growing, asking for help and reaching out to people and getting these coaches, we just show up better all around, right? Like you're a better doctor, you're a better spouse, better dad. You just show up better all the way around. It's not just about your business.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing on the productivity, I feel like I'm the laziest person on the world, and the grass is always greener. The more super productive and successful people I meet, it's like getting a look behind the curtain of Wizard of Oz. We're all trying to figure it out, and
Yep.
give yourself a break.
Yep, I agree with you on that. I agree. It's fun. That's why I said this journey is fun, and it's supposed to be meant to be a journey. Really, it is. And I've learned that there's really no shortcuts to success. If you want to get where you need to be, you have to put the work in, and you have to be willing to be humbled a few times, fall on your knees, and get back up. So, thank you for sharing all that. I think it's awesome what you're doing. So, what like for maybe somebody, I don't know, that's like coming into this space, and I don't know, maybe they want to look for their first real estate, or maybe they're a doctor right now and they're kind of looking for that side hustle. What advice would you give someone? I think this is going to be a great area for you right here.
Yeah. So first thing I'd say is a little selfish. Listen to my podcast. So from MD to entrepreneur, Apple Podcast, Spotify, all that stuff. But this is a question I have all the time. And what I would tell people is try to figure out how you can get started as quickly as possible. We, especially us high achievers, we're like, okay, where's the book? Where's the course? What kind of degree can I get on this? Or, they'll get this like 2-year coaching package, which is great, but you need to get started. And I tell this story a lot, but there was a study where this professor, he had a pottery class, right? He told all the students, hey, your final exam is very important. It's going to be most of your grade. So he split the class half. He told them, the same thing, pottery, your final exam is very important. Here's all this research, read all that stuff, but I want you guys to really focus on it. You have the whole month to do this one pot, right? Make it as good as possible. And this other class, the other half of the class, he said, hey, this final pot is very important, but you guys have to do a pot every day. So every day I want you guys to make a pot. And since I'm telling you a story, you probably know the answer, but it's the people that made the pot every day. They realize, hey, when I do it the handle this way, it looks nicer, or I can sketch something this way. And even though they only had 24 hours compared to, 30 days for the other group, their pot was just so much better. So how can you get to iteration 20 as quickly as possible? Your audience may have heard of the Facebook saying, go fast and break things, but you'll all this stuff is reversible, right? I tell this to my team all the time. We're talking about subject lines and emails. I'm like, just get it out. Like, even if there's try to not have a typo, and if there is, just blame me. But if we can't be focusing on this stuff too much, we have to get the ball rolling, right? Create that flywheel effect. So that's what I would say. Just try to get started. So you're like, okay, Pranay, that sounds great. How do I get started? Good. Okay. So try to think of what comes to you easily. So quick story. I started a blog because my business partner, who's very successful, has a blog. He's made 7 figures on his blog. I was like, okay, I've worked with him. I saw all his processes. Let me just copy them all, and he'll help me promote my blog, all that stuff. I would post my blog Wednesday morning, Tuesday night, every week, midnight. I'd be like, oh, I got an hour left. Let me figure out what this blog is going to be about. Every single week, I would never be early. And it's just because I hate writing. I've never been good at writing. And so over time, it became a pain, and I hated it, as a sense of dread. And even if someone was paying me a fortune, which they weren't, to do it, I probably still would hate to do it, And I found out my partner's the same way. He hates doing his blog too, but now he's making a ton of money, so he has to do it. So I thought, okay, let's change that around. What do I like to do? I like having conversations. I like meeting interesting people, like yourself,
Mm-hmm.
I like getting therapy for free, which is what I get a lot of times on my podcast, you know? And so let me create a podcast, right? Maybe no one will listen to it, but at least I'll get a lot of benefit out of it. And the goal is not to get a ton of downloads. That's a nice side effect, but it's
Sure.
to meet interesting people. Right. And I've done business with some of the people that I've already met. In my podcast, I've only had 30 episodes so far. So that is easy for me. For other people, they like video, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or other people will like to do curation. That's actually another thing. If you are the one that sends your friends all really cool links and stuff, maybe you make a newsletter. So try to find a venue for you it doesn't feel like you're going against the grain, right?
Yeah.
But know that even if you do pick something and you drop it, you'll learn important skills along the way. So my blog, it taught me how to write quick, because I'd be like 12:54. I'd be like, shoot, I got to write a whole blog post. And last year I did a master's program, and my professor was like, hey, where's this essay? And I was like, oh, shoot, it's a 5-page essay. I was like, oh yeah, let me send it to you really quickly. And I wrote a 5-page essay in 2 hours. Yeah. That normally would take me
great.
3 weeks. Yeah. But because I was able to kind of organize my thoughts and I'm used to writing quickly because of my blog, it's a skill that I learned. So even though it's a, failure, it taught me these skills. And I thought the same thing about podcasting. I've always wanted to be more eloquent and be able to be quicker on my feet, thinking and speaking, and also be able to carry a good conversation. And so that's something I'm working on the podcast. So even if it, quote unquote fails, those are skills that I'll be able to carry on to the future.
Sure.
So
yeah.
So one, get started, find something that you resonate with and get started.
I love it. No, these are all really good points. And I was smiling at you because I was doing a blog for a while too. And I still have it up on my site. And it's so funny because people read it and they comment on it. But like you, it was the same thing. I was forcing this, I'd have to sit down and I'd write this blog. And then I would be like, oh, I got to get a blog out because it's time to get the blog out. What am I going to write about? And I can't just write when I'm not ready to write. And so I was getting under all this pressure to write this blog. And then I would write it and then I'd have to wait a day to go back and read it again to make changes. It was like this really long process. And, I started my podcast right before the pandemic. So I started in October of 2019. And I didn't know what I was doing, probably like you. I was probably like you. I always tell people, go back and listen to some of my Starter Girls episodes. I'm actually revamping that show, which is going to be so much fun because all the old episodes are on there. But I tell people, go back and watch those shows when we didn't know what we were doing, right? We've learned. But for me, that has always kind of been a natural, easy thing for me to do. I love meeting the individuals like you do. I think that's my favorite part is having the dialogue. It's the conversation, right? It's not even an issue for me to find guests because that's fun. I enjoy it, right? But having to write, another story. I will agree with you on the writing quicker. I think Grammarly is a great tool to have for backup when you need to write fast. I'm like, but even now, I'm writing those, the things you put on the YouTube, I can get those done in 10 minutes. I just used to be days. I'd be looking at that stuff and going, what am I going to write on this thing?
Yeah. You're talking about, old episodes. My wife listens to some of my old episodes if she's having trouble sleeping.
That's great. That's great. I love it. Well, I think, I say you just get better as you keep doing it. My conversations have definitely got better. The interviewing skills, the guests are even so much better. But we had some great people on. And like you, I don't feel like there's really any ever failed experiences. I think there's only learned moments. So if something didn't work out, you needed to try it and look at what you can take away from it. You learned how to write quicker, faster, and the speaking is definitely a skill. I had a gal on my show a few weeks ago that was a speaker coach and was talking about that, how so many people are fearful of that. So just doing this alone, I'm like, if you can do a podcast, you got it. Right?
Yeah, definitely. And you'd be surprised because it lives forever, right? So people are still finding podcasts that I was on, years ago. And it's pretty cool. I think podcasts are the new book,
Yeah.
10 years ago, everyone was like, oh yeah, I have a book, now you're like, oh yeah, I have a podcast. And it's something that people can listen to you, right? And it's your platform. So say you're looking for a job or, you're trying to get a business deal going, you could just send them a couple episodes and they could see your personality from it. And, you're literally being beamed into someone's brain, right, through their headphones, and that's as intimate as you can get.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have gotten clients from people listening to my show too. They've heard a couple episodes. The other thing that I think is so great about podcasting too is you can connect people. Like I always tell people, I really love connecting people. That's probably one of my greater strengths is finding, matching people up. And so I always say it's funny because I'll remember details about people and it may be a long time, but there will be somebody I come across and I'm like, I need to introduce you to so-and-so. And I don't know what's going to come from that, if that's going to be a synergistic thing, or maybe it's just you guys share knowledge, or maybe there's a business deal. I don't know. But I think that's what's so great about what we do too, is that we have the ability to be connectors, whether it's our audience connecting to our people or us connecting, our guests to each other. So I think there's a lot of cool. I do want to commend you too on something else though, that you said, that the getting started, because I just had this conversation this morning. This morning I was talking about how we get so hung up on everything having to be perfect. Like, especially if we're high achievers and we got a little bit of perfectionist behind us. We want everything to be right. Website's got to look good. Business cards got to look, all these things got to look right. But it doesn't really matter if we're not going into action, if we're just sitting on all of that stuff, right? And so I've always kind of been that way that, like even in the network marketing space, we can learn a script. Script doesn't do you any good if you can't have a conversation and if you're not willing to talk to anybody, right? Like, forget the script, just go have a healthy conversation with somebody, And so I think we get hung up sometimes on all these things having like the green light saying go, 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 right? And I just don't think the green light always tells us to go. I think we just have to go,
Yeah. I had a podcast on this, and it was a realization. So a lot of people commend me on my background and, my microphone and stuff. And that's because I wanted to start a podcast, and I kept just researching stuff for a whole year. I was like, best microphone, like changing up my background and all that stuff. And eventually I ran out of stuff to look up and research because I had bought everything, and I finally had to get started, but that was it was a little bit of fear. It was a little bit of procrastination. And I should have just got started. I could have got started on like some Apple podcast mics, or Apple headphones.
Yeah. Well, you got started. That's all that matters, Pranay. You got started. You're here. Yeah. You're here. Right. All right. One last question I want to ask you, and then I'm going to move into some fun questions, because you are a dad, and I don't know how many kids. I guess I didn't ask you this, but tell us how you're juggling all this, because I know you're busy. I mean, and I know we all do these kinds of things. I feel like our time is all relative to us, and we all have the same amount of hours. So it really comes down to how we're prioritizing things. But I'd love to hear from you how you're keeping that harmony, with the family and in your career as a doctor and as an entrepreneur.
I work nights. So I work at the hospital at nighttime. So nighttime, it's kind of quieter. So, I can read, I can do some of the check emails and all that stuff. So I kind of, I sleep a couple hours at nighttime, a couple hours during the day, but, I'm getting close to 40. So I'm probably going to stop working nights in the near future. But, in the starting, it's powerful having a high paying job. You have that safety net, and I wouldn't rush to get rid of that until you have something that's going well, and I've slowly, instead of abruptly quitting, I've been slowly kind of decreasing my shifts and doing stuff elsewhere. And even my actual role in my group was created because of entrepreneurship. I was doing these educational videos outside, and they saw them, and they're like, "Hey, could you do that for us?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I got a promotion, and I'm director of education. So don't just think entrepreneurship is for starting your own business. Even there's a lot of opportunities inside your own company to be more successful. And maybe that's what appeals to a lot of people, because, there is a lot of risk in starting your own business. And that's a way to, so I got a promotion, got a higher salary, and it gave me more margin or breathing room to do what else I wanted to do on the side.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that's a smart answer to that, because I think sometimes people, especially if they're a really passionate person about their idea or their, whatever it is they're trying to create or get out there, they sometimes get these big ideas. I'm just going to quit everything and go over here, and I do think there's got to be that, I hate to say the word balance because I don't really think there's ever balance. I think it's finding the harmony, right? It's finding harmony. I think you have to do an ebb and flow here. You've got to figure out what's practically, what's going to be practical and going to work for you, but at the same time, allow you that freedom to go do the things you want to do, and so I always have to say that to myself because I get excited about things and I'm like, let's just go. I'm ready to move. And then I have to say, okay, let's think about this for a minute, So I think that's a good answer, Pranay.
Yeah, and there is some sacrifice, right? So,
Sure.
But the way I look at it is, if I was working at a 9 to 5 every day, and then if you add an hour or so commute, I'd be gone all day. But here, right now, I'm at home. Yeah, I'm working, but I get to play with my kids here and there all day.
Yeah.
So that, that's a balance, and that's,
Sure.
but that's a sacrifice. But, sometimes I have to travel, I have to go to conferences, I have to do that stuff. But the hope is that by they're, a couple years old, that I have even more flexibility.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes that, and that's one of the things when I was even in network marketing, we would talk about that too, is that because a lot of women would have that guilt of making these sacrifices, but I was very fortunate that when I started, my oldest was 22. What did I say? She was 2 when I started. She's now 26 and married. So, and then I had 2 more kids. So I was actually able to be with my kids the entire time. And I remember in the beginning sort of kind of feeling guilty. And then I got to a place where I didn't really have that guilt anymore because I was with them. They never had to really go to daycare much. I mean, a few times they had to go to a drop sitter or something like that, but I picked them up from school. I took them to school. I had the flexibility to be able to do that. So I think we all make sacrifices, but it's just, if we know these are short-term sacrifices, right, for the greater good, then we can justify this and manage this, So I think you're doing awesome. How many kiddos do you have now?
So I have one son who's 19 months, and then a second on the way.
On the way. Oh, wow. Well, congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's so awesome. They're little humans. My oldest just turned 18. So mine are all adults finally now. So I give you hope that you're doing the right thing. Cause I think a lot is caught along the way. So, all right, Pranay. Well, this has been awesome. I want to ask you a few fun questions because I just think this is the rapid fire. We get off the serious side of things and just do some fun here. And I always tell people they're rapid fire, but they're never really rapid fire. So I'm just warning you.
Yeah.
All right. So I know that I can tell just from talking to you in our pre-conversation that you're pretty conscientious about your health and all of that. I can already tell. So I want to ask you this kind of fun question. What's your one guilty pleasure food that you love that's just not totally healthy?
Oh, okay. So every time I would leave medical school, and there would be a Cinnabon at the airport, and I love Cinnabons. It's like 2,000 calories, but it's worth it.
They're good. You know what? You're going to laugh, Renee, because I don't ever eat that stuff really either. Well, the other day I went to the store to buy my son because he's home right now he's traveling for work. He's home. So I went to get him a couple donuts because I went in to pick up some other stuff. I'm like, these donuts look good. I'm going to grab him a couple. Well, I decided that I wanted a donut. I can't even tell you the last time I've had a donut. It's probably been like a year since I've had a donut. So I don't just get a donut. I get a donut with sprinkles on it. Like it's got to have sprinkles and it's got a cookie. I get home and I'm like, I'm going to eat this donut. I don't even eat gluten half the time. So I get this donut down. I'm not kidding you. Within like 10 minutes after I ate it, I was like, oh my gosh, why did I eat? I felt awful. I just felt awful. So that'll probably be the last time I have another donut for another year. So, but I'm with you. Cinnabon is good for sure. Okay. I got a question for you. So when you're not working and doing medical school, doing your real estate, all the things, what do you enjoy doing? What's the fun thing you love?
So I like working out. So
Okay.
I have a pretty good home gym. So definitely use that.
Cool.
And play video games. I'm pretty excited for my son to get older to start playing video games with me. So
that's so fun. My son loves to play video games. So, do you have any particular game you love playing?
No, just whatever. I'm always late to games because I don't have much time. So it's nice because people complain that games are like $70, but They're like $10 if you
By
wait
the
a
time
year
you
or
get
two.
them.
Yeah.
My daughter, my oldest daughter has got, I'm not familiar with any of that stuff either. I used to play some of that, but I don't like you. I don't really have time to look at. My daughter got a Switch. She has a Switch. And I'm like, it has all the like, the Mario on it, like what I grew up with when I was a kid, and Zelda, like the Zelda, all of those Donkey Kong. So she brought it over one day, and I was like, oh my goodness, like it's got this teeny little controller. I couldn't move the buttons, but it was like I'm like, this is like the funnest thing ever. So, but if I play games, I like have to do like Tetris or something where there's like no ongoing thing, so I don't have to get invested in it. Right?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to multiplayer games and just just fun games and kicking their butts.
There you go. That's good. There you go. All right. Oh, I imagine you've done a lot of reading because you're obviously into education. So maybe a favorite author? Who's your favorite author? Or maybe a favorite book?
So I get this question. A lot of people use the same book, but this is called the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows.
Okay.
It's by John Koenig. And so what he does is he gathers terms in different languages for feelings that we often have but can't put a word to it.
Ooh, interesting.
So like Muldrow, a feeling of resonant connection with an author or artist you'll never meet.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah. So it's just full of different words and stories.
Yeah, you can learn some new things. I love it. I like to read. I don't get to read near as much as I want to, but I love to read. I always love this question because I can get book titles, and it's so funny. I have a couple clients. I have several clients, but I have some young clients that I'm teaching. It's so funny because one day I was on a training call and I was talking. I don't know if you've read Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Love it. It's my favorite book. I have a lot. Like I love John Maxwell. I have a lot of really good books I love. But anyways, I talk about Stephen Covey's book all the time because I talk about where he, the diagrams where he talks about the procrastination and the video game, all that. So I'm telling this girl one day, I'm talking about him and she says, you talk about him all the time. I said, yeah, because you need to read the book. So I have like a list of books, and it's so funny. Every time I get on a call with one of my clients, they'll start telling me about a book. And I'm like, which one are you reading? And they're like, I don't know, one of the ones you told me. I'm like, give me the name. Which one did I tell you to read? Because I always say the same. I mean, I read other books, but I have like, a handful of books that are like, I feel like are just core books I say to read. So anyways, good stuff. Good stuff. Okay. One last fun question. What's in your Amazon cart?
What is in my Amazon cart? Let me try to think of. We buy everything from Amazon. Like we don't do any. We bought some like cough syrup. Like we're.
Do you do groceries too?
We don't do groceries. We don't do groceries. We like going to Trader Joe's. So Trader Joe's doesn't deliver. Lately, right now, it's all like getting over the cold and virus and that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Well, we have Trader Joe's here down in Texas too. So I'm familiar with Trader Joe's, and I buy everything from Amazon too. Every now and then, it's funny because I have these particular yogurts that I love, and they're like a keto yogurt. I think they're called Ratio, and they're like a low sugar yogurt. I love them. I don't like yogurt, but I love those yogurts. And so guess what? You can't find them anywhere half the time. So every once in a while, I have to go order them off Amazon Fresh because they have them. So, and it's terrible because then I have to order like X number of dollars, and then I got to tip the driver, all that, know. But everything else we get. I feel like we have Amazon packages coming in like every other day. It's like something's being dropped off at the door. So with you on that. Well, this has been awesome, Pranay. If our audience would like to find out a little bit more about you, get in touch with you, where would you like for us to send them?
Yeah, so my website for the podcast is FromMD.com. So the podcast name is From MD to Entrepreneur. You can get it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, all that stuff. And if they want to learn more about real estate, you could go to AscentEquityGroup.com.
Okay. We'll make sure to, Pranay, when this goes out, I'll get the links on there and tag you and all that good stuff. We'll be in touch so that I can make sure that they know where to find you. And I do see on your mic where it says From MD to Entrepreneur. So I like it. Very cool.
That is kind of cool, huh?
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, I'm excited for you. I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story because that's what this is about. We really like to talk about, how you got to where you are, what you're doing, and how you're kind of living this extraordinary. You're extraordinary, right? It's your life. It's your extraordinary. And that's what I always say, you know. So I do want to say, of course, to our listeners, if you enjoy our show, please be sure you give us a rating. Check us out, iTunes. You can go on Facebook, give us a rating on there, and check us out on the YouTube. Subscribe. All right. And with that, we want to leave you guys with a final thought. In order to live the extraordinary, you must start. And every start begins with a decision. You guys take care, be safe, be kind to one another. We will see you next time.